Hey, Jennifer,
Yes.
Dan Cross is being shown as an attendee.
Promoting.
Thanks.
Angela, if you could just let us know when Justin's
Hello?
good.
Hello?
Hello.
Hey.
Hey,
Hey,
glad you can make it.
thank you.
Looks like we have a full house.
Excellent.
Yep.
Okay, we're all set.
All right. Would you like me to go ahead?
Yes, please.
All right. All right. So let's see. I'll go ahead and read the statement first. We'll be conducting tonight's meeting in a virtual setting using Zoom, still given the times that we're in with COVID. Planning commissioners and staff are participating from remote locations. Members of the public may view and listen to the meeting live tonight on Channel 18 and online through the city's website as noted on the agenda. The secretary will read your public comment if you left one via email or voicemail at the appropriate time. Note public comments are limited to 3 minutes. If you would like to leave a public comment now, please refer to the agenda for instructions. So welcome everybody to the November 18th, 2020 regular meeting, City of Lincoln Planning Commission meeting. I now call this meeting to order. And roll call, please. Secretary, if you'll do that.
Commissioner Cross,
Here.
Commissioner Hutchinson,
Here.
Commissioner Lyons,
Present.
Commissioner McKenney,
Here.
Commissioner Manning, Commissioner
Okay.
and
Oh, did we lose
did we lose
Angela?
He needs to unmute.
and Chair Johnson.
Present. Sorry, I'm not sure if you cut out or some other people did. Do we have everyone present?
I'm missing Manning.
Okay.
I see Tony's picture, but I don't hear his voice even when his mute's off. So something's technical there.
Let's see. Oh, yeah, it looks like he's trying to talk.
I don't see him.
You may, Commissioner Manning, you may want to jump out of the meeting and jump back in because you did work for a second.
All right. I guess, is it okay if we pause for a minute while he does that?
You the boss.
All right, it's okay then. We'll try to get him back online so he can participate.
It shows he's on, but no microphone is working. Oops. Just no video either now.
Mr. Chairman, I propose we move on and he can join us in progress.
Okay. Yeah, I was just thinking the same. Give him a few minutes. All right. Well, Commissioner Manning, if you can hear us, we'll go ahead and move on with Pledge of Allegiance and so forth, and hopefully you can join us soon. So we will go on to agenda item number 3. Just a reminder for the Planning Commissioner, you can stop your video for this part. But we're going to have Commissioner Roberts, please lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance.
Okay. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the
United States of America and
to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God. I think I just blew it. Okay, I'm done.
All right. How about, is it fine to do that one more time? I think it cut out.
Did it?
Yeah.
Okay. All right. Here we go. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, to which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Excellent. All right. Thank you. All right. Gotta love technology, huh?
We got the whole thing in 2 different pieces.
That's right. All right. Okay. Let's see. Commissioner Manning, are you on board now? You have audio? Looks like you're on mute. Oh, still not hearing you. Might be your audio connection. All right. Well, we'll wish Commissioner Manning luck on getting his audio figured out. We'll go ahead and move on to agenda item number 4, agenda modification. Do we have anyone from the commission or staff? Do we have anyone desiring to modify the agenda? Any items on the agenda?
Chair Johnson.
Yes.
Steve Presser, Community Development Director. Although it's not on the agenda, I wanted to provide information to those who are watching or attending through Zoom. There was a item that was noticed through the mail to be on this agenda, but unfortunately, due to a printing error at the Lincoln News Messenger, the legal public notice was not placed in the paper as required by both city regulations and state law. Therefore, it was not placed on the agenda. The item is the Meadowlands amended general development plan and tentative subdivision map, rezone, a minor amendment that will need to be renoticed. A new ad will need to be placed in the paper for the December 16th, 2020 meeting. So the last meeting of the year. But if anyone who is wondering why it was not placed on the agenda, it was a printing error with the newspaper. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you. So that was the Meadowlands project. Okay. I'm not hearing one from anyone else. I guess I have a question about tonight's item on the agenda, and I'm not sure, you might be able to direct me if this isn't the appropriate time to address it or wait until then, but item 8A, I know myself, and I'm not sure where this falls under as far as agendas going and all information available to the public, but I do know that looks like there was a CEQA document that was not included originally that came out at 11 a.m. to our emails today. And it's an important, as we know, CEQA is an important document. It's 90 pages long. I myself receiving it at 11 a.m. and being at work, just barely making it here, have not had an opportunity to open it. So I don't feel like I'm prepared to fully discuss that item tonight. And I'm not sure if there's other members of the public that would appreciate, tabling this until next month for proper time to, do the same. So I'm not sure, maybe looking for guidance on that and maybe some input from other commissioners if you have some of the same thoughts.
Chair Johnson, if there is the will of the Planning Commission to recommend the additional time for that inadvertent error, I would strongly recommend that we set a time for a special meeting. We could, at the convenience of the commission, with a 72-hour notice, we can provide another Zoom meeting for that item. Staff is confident that the information that was provided in the staff report provides the information necessary to make an informed decision with the background documents associated with the M&D. But of course, it is the purview of the Planning Commission. If you feel uncomfortable, I would recommend that you continue it to a special meeting as soon as we can convene.
Okay. And just looking at
Steve, apologies for interjecting. Paul Yunker, I'll be assisting with that project. I believe you would have to continue to a date certain if you want to preserve the public hearing notice. Otherwise, we would have to go through the public hearing notice as well, just for your consideration.
That is correct.
Chair Johnson?
Sure.
Can you hear me now?
Yes.
Yes, I fixed it. All right. Yeah, I had the same concern today. I haven't had a chance to look at the document either. I mean, it's like you said, it's 90 pages long. I opened it up just minutes before the meeting. There's obviously something in there. So I would like an opportunity to look at it. I feel that's where I feel if I'm going to be voting on something, especially something that has to do with CEQA. And I would like to ask Christine just basically about that, because I've often heard so many issues arise around the CEQA and notification and different things like that. Is do we put ourselves at any type of risk by not having that on the agenda earlier, and the fact that we haven't had a chance to look at it?
I believe, as Mr. Prosser communicated, because it is addressed in the staff report, staff believes they provided commission with sufficient information in order to consider it. But certainly this is an issue that if the commission wants, because you are simply making a recommendation to the city council, and it is actually the city council that is the one that would be adopting the CEQA documents, I believe that you could move forward tonight. But of course, if you're not comfortable because you haven't had a sufficient opportunity to review it, then I don't think any of staff would have any problem with continuing this meeting to a date certain so that we don't have to do the renoticing. And then we could just republish it with the omitted document.
Christine, do you mind clarifying, I guess, for me, what do you mean by date certain?
In other words, if you're going to continue this item to another meeting date, you need to announce that as part of this meeting here, that you are continuing it to November, whatever date at 6 o'clock as a special meeting.
Okay.
And Chair Johnson, if that is the desire of the Planning Commission, because council does not have a normal meeting on Tuesday the 24th, that date is available.
Okay.
Why would we have to do a special meeting for it? Couldn't it just be dealt with at the next Planning Commission meeting?
Commissioner Manning, you can, but it would be we would be delaying a project, I believe, unfortunately, for an additional 30 days. If we are able to provide an opportunity for a special meeting, that's what I would hope for. But yes, we could continue it to the next meeting.
Okay.
Can I ask a question?
We need to make note of the fact that we're we're not approving the CEQA document anyway. We're recommending approval to the council, and they have to finally approve it. So if we're not going to work on it tonight, I'm in favor of a special meeting to keep things moving.
Okay. Go ahead.
Is it, will staff in their staff report be covering the CEQA piece? And if, you know, are there any findings, measures?
Commissioner Johnson, I was able to, because of my schedule, read over the 90-page report, and I do agree with Mr. Prosser that the memo from the staff is very comprehensive. Now, I do have some notes I made of a couple of questions, but I would imagine that those questions will be answered through the staff report if they give it, under the memo area. So I'm all right either way. I will certainly support whatever the rest of the commissioners want to do. But that was my perception after reading through the 90 pages.
Okay.
Quickly.
Yeah. Okay. And I know myself, I feel comfortable for myself being able to go through it. And I guess I'm thinking about the citizens out there that haven't had a chance to look at it properly. And if, give them an opportunity to formulate some questions, if they have any or comments, to be able to present that to us. As Commissioner Cross mentioned, we are not making the final, vote for approving it or not approving it. We're making a recommendation, but this is also an opportunity the public have to express their opinion and concerns. So I'm more inclined to do a special meeting. Mostly for that reason, just to make sure that people have adequate time in the community to address anything if they want to. Because I know that's part of the process. So
I think based on that makes good sense, Mr. Chairman.
Chair Johnson, Jim Bermudez, real quick. I just, on that statement, I want to point out that indeed more time for the community and residents is something that we want to give and allow. But for the CEQA process, I just want to shed some light on the noticing. Given that it's a mitigated neg deck, there is a requirement that it be released 21 days prior to the actual hearing date, which would be this meeting. So just for the public's sake, and for the commission, the environmental document has actually been on the street, as we say in the planning world, for 21 days, and noticing has gone out to the surrounding residents of the project, and they've been informed of the release of the document. So there has been some time for anybody interested in this project to review it in that 21-day period as is required by CEQA.
Okay.
Mr. Chairman, may I comment as well?
Yes.
If the commission decides to continue, I would suggest, and our attorney can advise whether this is the proper language to do this or if it's appropriate, that there may be people who have joined this meeting tonight that may not be available for whenever we happen to reschedule it for. And I think it would still be good to open the public hearing, hear all the people who want to make comments, and then I don't know if the proper term is to suspend the public hearing, to table it to a date certain, but then reopen it, and hopefully that meeting would be considerably shorter because most of the other issues would already be addressed. And anybody who wanted to be heard that is here tonight could be heard tonight.
I think that's a fantastic idea.
Yeah, I'm up for that too. So what I'm hearing from everybody's, or maybe not, I'm not speaking for everybody, but so what I'm hearing from some is that we're okay with postponing it to a date certain, but also having some kind of a opportunity for anybody that's on there now to make some comments related to this.
Well, if
Chair,
we all,
Chair Johnson? Oh, sorry.
no,
So what we would want to do is hear public hearing 8A. We present our staff report, questions, open public comment, and before you close public comment, continue the item. So it's not really an agenda modification. If at that time you have determined that you do not have enough information to make an informed decision, then a motion for continuance would be appropriate.
Or we can continue with the item, and if we're comfortable, if everybody's comfortable based on what we hear from the public and from the staff report and questions that are asked, we could proceed with recommending each of the resolutions and approving those.
Correct.
Okay. So then, and this is all for my education. This is good. Part of the process to learn. So if we were to, so at the end of the public hearing portion of that agenda item, would I bring a motion to the Planning Commission to, I guess, postpone it until a date certain? And depending on that vote, you know, we would move forward with the resolutions tonight, or if we postpone it. Is that accurate?
Chair, essentially, yes, you would solicit a motion from your commission. You should not be the one making the motion. It should come from a member of your commission.
Okay.
you can ask.
Okay. Excellent. Okay. Well, I say we proceed in that manner then. Sounds like this is not an agenda modification, but when we get to that item, I'll just plan on asking if there's a motion for that, if that works for everybody.
Works for me.
All right. So with that, we will move on from agenda item number 4, agenda modification, to agenda item number 5, residents addressing the commission. So let's see, given the online platform, I'll turn it over to the secretary. If you will please read any public comments received, and then we'll go to public comment if there's anyone online.
I have not received any, Chair.
Okay. And do we know if we have any that are online live at the moment?
We have one hand raised.
Perfect.
Mr. Carver, you can unmute.
Yeah, can you hear me? Hello?
Yes.
Can you hear me? Okay, great. So yeah, I do have an issue with not being able to read the documents that.
Who are you?
Sorry about that. My name is Randy Carver, right here, living in Lincoln, California, N Street. So yeah, I have an issue. Sorry about that. So I have an issue with the 90-page CEQA document as well. I mean, if we're not able to have sufficient time to read this, then there's no real understanding for the public to basically be able to review or look over and try to figure out what's going on with it. It was posted 21 days prior. I'm not sure where that was published or posted, but I haven't heard of it, and this is the first time I've seen it.
Mr. Carver, if I may just briefly
Go ahead.
You're wishing to address item 8A. We're not there yet. This is a time for members of the community to address items that are not on the agenda. So if you want to comment on item 8A, you can do that during the public hearing.
With that, I regress. Sorry about that. Thank you so much.
No worries. Thank you.
No worries. Yeah, no, thank you for clarifying that. Yeah, so I know, like myself, before I got involved in all this, I wasn't really sure how it worked. So yeah, we'll go ahead and save that one for the public comment during agenda item 8A, but thanks for chiming in. So do we have any other hands raised? And this is for just a reminder, items that are not on the agenda.
There are no hands raised.
Okay, excellent. So we'll go ahead and close that agenda item. Residents addressing the commission. We'll move on to agenda item number 6, disclosure of ex parte communication. So let's see. We'll just go ahead and go around the table. Since it's a virtual setting, I'll just go through one by one. If anyone has any ex parte communication to share. Commissioner Cross?
None.
Commissioner Hutchinson?
None.
Commissioner Lyons?
None.
Vice Chair McKinney?
None as well.
Commissioner Manning?
None.
Commissioner Roberts?
None.
And myself, I have none. All right, so that closes out item number 6. Item number 7 is consent agenda. And let's see, all matters on the consent agenda are considered routine business and will be enacted by one motion. There will be no separate discussion of these items unless a member of the commission or resident requests a specific item be removed from the consent agenda for separate action. Any items removed will be considered after the remainder of the consent agenda. Do any of my colleagues wish to remove an item from the consent agenda? I am not hearing any. Okay, so let's see. How about anyone from the public? I'm not hearing any.
We have one hand raised.
Oh, okay.
Go ahead, Mr. Carver.
So is this where 8A will be pulled, or is that part of the process? I know this isn't a question and answer.
No, Mr. Carver, this is the consent agenda. This is regarding the approval of minutes from previous meetings.
Okay, is that all? Oh, sorry about that. That's all it is 7A and 7B. Is that correct?
Yes.
Correct.
Okay, sorry about that. Thank you.
No worries. Yeah.
Move approval of the consent agenda.
Second.
All right, we have a motion and a second. Roll call, please.
Sorry, who was the second?
Me, Michelle Hutchinson.
Thank you. So Commissioner Cross.
Yes.
Commissioner Lyons.
It was Commissioner Cross that made the motion.
Okay, Commissioner Cross.
Yes.
Commissioner Hutchinson.
Yes.
Commissioner Lyons.
Yes.
Commissioner Manning.
Yes.
Commissioner McKinney.
Yes.
Commissioner Roberts.
Yes.
Chair Johnson.
Yes. All right. Thank you for that. Moving on from the consent, we will go on to item number 8A, public hearings. So the first one is 8A, Joyner Ranch East Subdivision, public hearing to consider a general plan amendment, zoning amendment, Joyner Ranch General Development Plan Amendment, small lot tentative subdivision map approval to create 199 medium density residential lots. Let's see, so we have 4 resolutions for this item. And with that, we will go ahead and move into staff report, and then we'll move into the public hearing portion of that.
Yeah, good evening, Chair Johnson. Jim Bermudez here. There are moments when we're working on projects that we have to bring in and utilize other staff. And in this case, we have brought in one of our consultants from our planning consulting list, Mr. Paul Junker. He is assisting the city with this particular project. Paul has been in the planning area for numerous years, seasoned veteran, and has actually helped the city on some other projects moving forward the last couple of years. So at this moment, I'll turn it over to Paul, and then he'll take it away on the staff presentation.
Thank you, Jim. Chair, members of the commission, it's a pleasure to share this project with you this evening. As Jim mentioned, I had assisted with a number of projects in Village 1, Village 7, and some other projects inside your city, and have grown familiar and have an appreciation for your community. At this point, I'm going to share my screen. I think I have that functionality Let's see if this is going to work. All right. I think you see the presentation. Great. So without further ado, we will be going over the Joyner Ranch project, a typical presentation on background, the project description, some key issues that we believe the commission should be aware of. We will be going over the CEQA analysis that was prepared just to provide some background. And we do have Patrick Hindmarsh with Michael Baker International, the firm that prepared the CEQA document. So he will give a little deeper dive into the CEQA document than is typical for such a presentation. We'll then move on to questions and see where the commission would like to go at that point. Let's start out with where the Joyner Ranch East project is located. At Nicholas Road and Joyner Parkway. When this project was approved in 1985, it was a very close-in project that added substantial new homes to the community, and this site was anticipated for commercial development. As we move in a little bit closer to the project site, we can see Joyner Park directly adjacent. There's a drainage ditch and open space corridor on the south side, and then Joyner Parkway, west of the project, Nicholas Road, forming the northern boundary. Project's 25.66 acres, and it's proposed as residential development. Relatively straightforward project, 199 residential units. The main difference of this project from typical subdivision development is the lots are somewhat smaller. They run 42 to 45 feet wide on average. Some are a little wider, 70 to 80 feet deep. So those are considerably smaller than the typical 6,000, 6,500 square foot single family lots. What is the applicant requesting? Well, there's a number of entitlements that will be required for this project. They start at the level of the general plan amendment, a zoning amendment, an amendment to the adopted Joyner Ranch General Development Plan, and then finally the tentative subdivision map that would establish the residential sites themselves. Starting with the general plan and zoning amendments, these exhibits show you the current on the left, the general plan and zoning for roughly 20 acres of the site is general commercial, both general plan and zoning. And then there is currently a designated 5+ acres that's general plan, medium density residential, and zoning is RD8. The applicants have proposed that the entire developable site would be medium density residential, general plan, and what's referred to as planned development, medium density residential. So that's a little bit modified designation. We'll talk about that in a minute. The drainage corridor on the southern portion of the site would be designated open space. The big change here is we're going from commercial to residential. This project was anticipated to have a commercial hub at the intersection of Nicholas and Joyner in 1985 when it was approved. There have been substantial changes in Lincoln since that time. Major projects in the southern portion of the city, changes to the routing of the Highway 65 bypass and how roads connect to it. It had been anticipated that Joyner Parkway would have a connection to 65. And there's been some big commercial projects that exist within the city now that had not ever been anticipated when this project was originally approved. All of that's led to a site that sat vacant for 35 years. And honestly, I wish I could tell you otherwise, but I think the prospects of commercial development at this location are diminishing, not increasing, in no small part to the shift from brick and mortar to e-commerce, and then adding to that the other competition within the city. This has not been a viable commercial site for 35 years, and it's not likely that it will be. Because of that, the applicants have requested conversion of this land to residential, which does have a strong market and would contribute to the community. Joyner Ranch General Development Plan was adopted with the original project approvals. There is a map within the General Development Plan that identifies this property similar to the general plan and zoning. It's about 20 acres commercial and 5.8 acres residential. The applicants are requesting that be amended to provide for a residential project with a small open space area on the southern portion. There are no development standards in the Joyner Ranch General Development Plan for medium density residential. So a new section has been crafted. It's only about a page long, but it's been inserted within the General Development Plan to guide development for this project. And if there is ever any other medium density residential in Joyner Ranch, it would also apply to that land. There's been some corrections within the General Development Plan for things that would be incorrect with the adoption of or the approval of this project. But for the most part, the balance of the General Development Plan remains unchanged. The final approval being sought is the tentative subdivision map. This would create 199 residential units. The tentative map does a number of things. It, of course, establishes the lots, the street patterns within the project. It describes the sections or widths of streets. Pages of the tentative map also describe how utilities and services will be provided within the project site. There's additional sheets beyond this, but this sheet we're looking at is it's titled as the preliminary grading plan, but it does include the road sections, which are an important aspect of the plan. So, some interesting things about the project. This project is proposed on the corner of two significant streets, Nicholas Road and Joyner Parkway. There is no frontage on Nicholas Parkway along the northern edge of this project, so it would be constructed with the Joyner Ranch East project. As we looked at the project, there was concerns about how cars move on Nicholas Road, and it really relates to a level of congestion that occurs. Nicholas Road is heading eastward as it approaches Joyner Parkway. There's two lanes. Two lanes go through the intersection and then merge within about 150 feet on Nicholas Road just east of Joyner Parkway. In that same 150 feet, there's a turn lane coming off of Joyner Parkway east on Nicholas. So in essence, you have three lanes of traffic that are all trying to merge within a 150-foot distance, which is not conducive to flow of traffic. This project would create improvements west of Joyner Parkway that would reduce that road, would reduce Nicholas to one lane of through traffic before the intersection, and also would create the opportunity to provide improvements at the corner of the southwest corner of Joyner Parkway and Nicholas Road, where there currently is no room for pedestrian improvements. So by necking down Nicholas Road to one through lane, we serve a number of purposes. Joyner Parkway has already been improved, was improved to its ultimate edge with construction. There's two lanes that head north across Nicholas Road. Those would be retained. The curb line for Joyner Parkway along the project is proposed to be retained, so no change to the asphalt surface or the road section. The entry into the project on Joyner Parkway would be widened by about 20 feet. The curb line as constructed is not adequate, and so that would be reconstructed to give a little bit more room for turning into the project. That type of configuration of a right turn in and a right turn out of the project at that entry of Joyner is consistent with roadways designed for subdivisions, residential development. There's also a left into the project for cars that are heading south on Joyner Parkway. It's blocked off right now. There's traffic pylons that keep that pocket from being used. That would be opened up. So folks that are traveling south on Joyner Parkway would be able to use the existing turn pocket to turn left into the project. All of those improvements are existing, and the project largely would not modify them. sidewalk and landscaping would be installed behind the existing curb. So those are the roadway projects outside of the project. Within the subdivision, it's fairly conventional local street widths. There is the open space parcel that I mentioned on the southern portion of the property. There's an existing drainage channel there. There's also an existing 12-foot bike trail easement. That easement is currently rather close to where the 100-year flood exists, the 100-year flood plain. And so this project would relocate the bike trail easement northward towards close to the back of the properties, the rear fence lines of the properties. You see them numbered as 183 through 197, 98. There would be a step down. The trail would be somewhere between 3 and 5 feet below the backyard. So that would give a little bit of sense of privacy to the backyards of the homeowners. The applicant would construct this bike trail as well as basic landscape improvements within the open space corridor. You see the red arrow. This is actually a drainage and utility parcel. So there would be a trail from the subdivision down to the bike trail, and this would connect Joyner Park to Joyner Parkway and is identified in the city's bicycle master plan as an improvement. So the developer would be providing that connection for the residents in the community. Project has a significant amount of interface with Joyner Park. It's all along the west, or all along the east edge of the project is existing Joyner Park. In order to maintain eyes on the park and create visibility into the park, Street H, I believe it is single loaded for most of its length. There's also a triangular piece of property, also shown here, that would be dedicated to the city, further opening up the views from Street C into the park. So this is land owned by the developer that they would dedicate to the city. There is a small amount of land that is in Joyner Park right now, 0.02 acres, that the city would release to the owners of the property. They would then construct improvements and rededicate this right-of-way to the city. That allows us to get the required knuckle that we desire for safety, life safety, and fire access. Environmental review. Well, we've had a little bit of a discussion of this already, but we do have Patrick on the line, and once I offer a few comments, I'm going to turn it over to Patrick, and he's going to provide a deeper explanation of the potentially significant impacts that were identified and how they were mitigated, and then the resulting determination of the environmental document. In short, the city had prepared an initial study mitigated negative declaration to look at the impacts of this project. In doing so, you check through a long list of potential impacts and determine if there is any potential for those to result from the project. There were 4 areas of potential impacts identified: biological resources, noise, cultural resources, and tribal cultural resources. It is very common to have cultural resources and tribal cultural resources as identified as a potentially significant impact because you simply don't have certainty that there are no cultural resources. And so there are appropriate mitigation measures required. Because this project has a general plan amendment associated with it, we were required to consult with Native American tribes. We sent out letters and notice of the initial study to 4 tribes, I believe. We did receive a request for consultation from the United Auburn Indian Communities, and we worked with representatives of the tribe. They also were interested in discussing the CEQA document, which is required under AB 52. So we consulted in 2 different aspects with the tribes. In both cases, United Auburn Indian Communities did reach out. We had productive conversations, The representatives requested that certain mitigation measures be included, and we included them as requested by the tribes. With that, the tribes were satisfied and concluded the consultations required under AB 52 and SB 18. At this point, I would ask Patrick if you can come on the line, and you should have your hand up for Jennifer, and maybe you can share a little bit more because you were the individual responsible for the impact analysis for this document.
Good evening, commissioners. I'm Patrick Hindmarsh with Michael Baker. As Paul mentioned, we prepared the initial study mitigated negative declaration for the project, and the 4 topic areas that you see on that slide required mitigation to reduce impacts to less than significant. Other topic areas in the mitigated neg deck were all less than significant without mitigation. In terms of biological resources, there were a number of species that appeared on a California natural diversity database search. Those were assumed to be present, and we had mitigation measures in the mitigated neg deck to do surveys for those and mitigate for those, and that could have been done either individually by the project applicant or through the Placer County Conservation Program. So with those mitigation measures, the impacts on biological resources were reduced to less than significant. Cultural resources and tribal cultural resources. Tribal cultural resources is a subset of cultural resources. And as Paul mentioned, there was AB 52 consultation and SB 18 consultation with tribes. And through the AB 52 consultation, we received a request to include some discovery mitigation measures, which are specific to tribal cultural resources. And we also have cultural resources discovery mitigation measures. So during construction, if any cultural resources or potential tribal cultural resources are found, construction stops and they consult with whomever is the appropriate person or entity to evaluate those resources, and then those can be mitigated through that process. With regard to noise, there was a potential for construction impacts on adjacent residential properties. So the MND has a mitigation measure to limit construction hours to 7 a.m. to 7 p.m. On Monday through Saturday, and has various other restrictions on requiring certain types of mufflers and things like that. And that would reduce the noise levels to be consistent with the municipal code. Beyond that, there were no other mitigation measures required. And with that, all impacts of the project were reduced to less than significant.
Thank you, Patrick. Patrick will be available if the commission has questions as we go forward. Recommendation from staff, if you are comfortable, now at a future meeting, our recommendation will remain the same. First of all, you were provided an errata that would modify the wording of condition number 61. In essence, the applicants are required to pay an in lieu fee because they're not providing park inside the project. That's something that's typically required. This project is quite small in nature and very close to Joyner Park, so constructing additional park inside Joyner Ranch East doesn't make a lot of sense. It's a very good candidate for paying an in lieu fee. The applicants simply requested that they have the option to dedicate land for park purposes outside of the project, as well as paying the fee. And there, it will be explored which is the best option for the city and which the applicants wish to pursue. So whatever actions you take, whenever they're taken, we would ask that you incorporate the modification to condition number 61. The 4 actions as described at the outset of the meeting are adoption of a resolution recommending approval of the general plan amendment, a resolution recommending approval of the zoning amendment, a resolution recommending approval of the amendments to the Joyner East General Development Plan, and then finally a recommendation to the City Council to approve the Joyner Ranch East tentative subdivision map. Chair, that concludes the staff presentation. We do have certain visual resources available if you're interested in looking at aspects of the project. Patrick and myself are available for questions. I would turn it over to you.
All right, thank you for that presentation. Do you have some of those visuals right now, or is that something that we contact you with or for?
Well, I'm referring to additional slides.
Okay.
These are images that are available should you have questions about the project. So they might be informative depending on the questions that the commission might have.
Okay. Yeah, thank you for your presentation. So before we open up public hearing, I just want to bring it to our commissioners to see if anyone has any initial comments or questions before we open up the public hearing. So I'll just go through the list again real quick to see if anyone has anything. Commissioner Cross?
Yes. Can you hear me okay?
Yes.
Okay. Concern I have is that these lots are narrower by, was it 5 to 10 feet or 5 to 20 feet than the average single family lots throughout our community. Is this going to pose an on-street parking problem? If you've got 40 feet of house frontage and 20 feet of that's taken up by a driveway, then you have 20 feet potentially left over. Are we going to have room to park cars on the streets for the residents and visitors? Has this been addressed, or is it not a concern?
You would have 1 to 2 spaces in front of houses depending on how the driveways are aligned. But there would be at least 1 street parking space for every house, in addition to the 2 in the driveway and the 2 in the garage. So that's how parking would be provided. But it would be less than a larger lot project that has 55-foot wide lots.
Okay, I do not have experience with 40 to 45-foot lots. Do you, and do you see this as a potential problem?
I believe that as long as individuals are willing to utilize their garages for parking, there would be no parking issue at all. I know that as a father of 2 daughters, there was a time when we had 4 cars in our household, and that occurs. So it really depends on the individual, how they will choose to utilize their garage, whether they use it for cars or for storage. But at a minimum, every house will have 2 driveway parking spaces plus 1 on street, and then would also have available the 2 spaces in the garage, which well exceeds the requirements for parking. The parking standard as established by the city is certainly met by this project.
All right, that's the other thing I wanted to know. It does meet the standard set by the city.
Yes.
Okay, thank you very much. That's the only question I had.
Okay. Thank you, Commissioner Cross. That's a great question. Let's see. Commissioner Hutchinson, do you have anything?
Just one thing. In looking over all the documentation, the question I have deals with the additional 199 homes and the impact on Joyner Parkway. There are certain areas now where we're looking at a level of service that is under the required C mitigation area during the commute hours. And I'm wondering if you've considered the impact on traffic in that area. And then also, if you could explain to me a little bit more about the Nicholas and Joyner intersection. In the slide that you were showing us, you were sharing that if a driver is going north on Joyner, that there were left-hand turn signals into the development. I would think that it would be right-hand turn signals. And maybe I've got my streets wrong. I was trying to visualize that.
Well, there was a whole lot of lefts, northbounds, right, southbounds.
Yes.
All of that. I appreciate that. So let's, I'm going to pull up a slide so we can.
Just clarify it a little bit better for me.
Certainly. This is an aerial of the project. The existing driveway into the Joyner Ranch East project is here. For traffic that is heading north on Joyner Parkway, they can do a right-in movement. For vehicles exiting Joyner Ranch East, they would only be able to exit to the right. Okay, that's what's meant by a right in, right out.
Correct.
There is an existing pocket for southbound traffic on Joyner that is not currently in use, but would be opened up for southbound Joyner traffic to turn left into the project. So that would be the Joyner movements.
Okay, good. Thank you.
Certainly.
All right. Commissioner Hutchinson, anything else at this time?
Not at this time.
Excellent. Commissioner Lyons, how about you?
Yes, I'm curious. This was originally planned for commercial development. Was there ever any environmental impact report or anything done prior to this, relevant to this?
I'm sure there was, Commissioner, and I have reviewed some of the earliest EIRs, and they are remarkably thin in content. We did review the general plan EIR, but in the case of this project, we felt it was appropriate to look at the specific setting. And because of that, there was traffic analysis conducted. There was specific biological resource analysis conducted. So the mitigated negative declaration was a much more current and deeper analysis of the project than we had available through previous CEQA documents.
Okay, so the reason I'm asking that is what we see in the mitigated negative declaration, is that compared to not doing anything, or is that compared to what it would have been if it had been commercial? In other words, the increase in traffic, increase in noise, increase in light, whatever. Would those, are those things listed as compared to the way it is as it sits now, or as it would have been if it had been commercial?
The comparison is to the existing conditions, not what was entitled under the previous. So this is really looking at how would the environment change as a result, not from what it might have, could have, would have been.
Okay, so potentially, and I'm not asking you to speak to this in detail, but potentially many of these things could be just the same if it was as it was originally planned as commercial.
Commercial is generally a higher traffic generator than residential, and that would be one of the primary differences. The other, we call them footprint impacts, just the development of land. Many of those are similar, whether they're commercial or residential. The traffic, potentially the noise, and associated with traffic is air quality. All of those typically are a bit more with commercial. I will wait for Patrick to tell me to shut up and have him tell you the real story, but I think I'm getting that right.
Yes, you're correct. The footprint impacts are going to be the same. We assume that the whole site is going to be graded and everything removed, irrespective of it being commercial or residential. In terms of traffic, we have an LOS analysis in the initial study neg deck. There would be a different distribution of trips associated with commercial versus residential, inbound versus outbound timing. But as Paul mentioned, the LOS analysis for the neg deck determined that there would be no significant level of service impacts.
Thank you very much. I think that's all I have for now.
All right. Thank you. Let's see, Vice Chair McKinney, do you have anything at this time?
I do. I have a couple questions, and thank you. Some of my questions were answered in previous commissioner questions. Will this project, by converting to medium density residential, does that help us at all meeting our RENA numbers?
Unfortunately, no. The density is not such that it would likely qualify as affordable housing. There's been no indication from the developers that they intend to develop affordable housing. So I really don't think this will assist you with RENA.
Okay. On the traffic, I want to talk quickly again about the movements on Joyner. So on the right in, right out, and you're going northbound now on Joyner, if you're exiting the subdivision and you get to Nicholas Road, is there a U-turn opportunity for people to go southbound then on Joyner?
I believe there is, but I'm going to confirm that through the magic of Google Earth. Planner's best friend.
Otherwise, while you're doing that, Paul, otherwise, if somebody wanted to, if there isn't a U-turn opportunity, if somebody in the subdivision needs to go south on Joyner, which I expect they would, to get to schools and other services, they would need to go out to Nicholas, to the subdivision entrance at Nicholas, and that is a right or a left?
Jim, I think you may be more familiar with the roads. I did not see that there was a U-turn prohibition at this intersection. Jim, Steve, are you aware whether U-turns are allowed for northbound Joyner at Nicholas?
Yes, I believe this came up in our engineering traffic exercise on the project, and we confirmed that there is U-turns to allow traffic to flow southbound coming from this new subdivision.
And then at the north entrance to the subdivision on Nicholas, am I correct with the two lanes that is a right or a left? The subdivision onto Nicholas?
That one I'd ask Paul to pull up a plan. No, there's definitely a right. I just can't recall from memory if we're allowing cross traffic, to make that left turn out onto Nicholas.
Commissioner McKinney, let me make sure I understand. Could you re-ask the question?
So what I'm trying to figure out is how somebody in that subdivision will be able to go southbound on Joyner.
They would not currently be allowed, and it's not anticipated that they would exit on Joyner and have the opportunity to go southbound.
That's right. Joyner. I understand that, but there will be people who will need to go southbound. So their choice would be get onto Joyner to Nicholas and make a U-turn.
Correct.
Or go to the northern entrance to the subdivision along Nicholas to make a left to get to the light at Joyner and Nicholas, to then make a left to go southbound on Joyner.
I'm going to bring up my screen to make sure we're understanding each other. I think your statement was somebody could come here. This is roughly the entrance into the subdivision. They would only be able to continue eastbound on Nicholas.
So they cannot make a left out of that subdivision.
Oh, I got you now. Thank you. That's what I wasn't quite catching. Currently, the way it's striped, this is a striped island. I don't know that we have concluded with certainty whether this could be used as a left out This is the movement you're asking about, right?
Yes.
The left out, and then being able to go southbound on Joyner Parkway.
That's correct.
We have not gotten to final design on the road. We know that this configuration will provide safe movements, but the fine details of whether traffic would be allowed to utilize this as a merge lane, in essence, I do not recall a decision from engineering on that.
It looks like there's room to do it.
There is.
Because, residents need to have an easy way southbound on Joyner.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. And it looks like there's room to do that safely.
I agree.
McKinney, this is Ray Leftwich, city engineer. So I'm just logging on right now. Hopefully I can answer your question. Right now, the preliminary design out on Nicholas, it is a dual left turn lane, which would allow left turn coming out. Also, to answer your other question on Nicholas Road, that we do not have a prohibition for U-turns. So if somebody was to come out of exit the subdivision onto Nicholas Road, right now, the way we're looking at it is they would be able to make a left turn. Also, if they were to come out onto the Joyner entrance, they would be able to go up to the intersection at Nicholas and make a legal U-turn.
Okay. All right. Because that to me is an important aspect to make this work for people. Otherwise, it would just be a real challenge for future residents.
Good point. And I agree.
I agree.
Okay. Let's see. I think at this point, those are my questions. I may have others after we go to public hearing.
Okay. Thank you. Commissioner Manning.
Yeah, one question on Nicholas Road, east of the intersection. Is the future plan to widen that road?
Is not. Nicholas along the project would have one lane of traffic, and it would continue as a single lane eastward past Joyner Park. If the city engineer would like to shed any more light, but for this project, this would be a solution that would allow one eastbound lane for Nicholas east of Joyner Parkway.
Yeah, and I think I'd like to get that question answered by the city engineer on not necessarily this project, but the future of that road. Wasn't it planned to be widened, or isn't it planning to be widened?
It certainly was planned at one time, but that was before some of the major shifts in land uses within the city occurred. And that led to this reconsideration of proper configurations. You will see well east of the project, there is a very large road section that would accommodate 2 lanes traffic each direction, but that's not been anticipated in this area, is my understanding. Mr. Leftwich, you with us?
Yeah, sorry, I had to step away for a second. The other challenges we looked at was continuing the 2 lanes through on eastbound Nicholas on the west side of Joyner Parkway. Because of the PG&E gas distribution facility, if we were to continue 2 through lanes through the intersection, we would either not be able to have a dedicated right turn lane going on to southbound Joyner Parkway, or we'd have to lose bike and pedestrian facilities. I mean, literally, we would not have enough room to have a sidewalk in that location, let alone a bike lane. So based on that, we took a look at the traffic patterns and made the taper to 1 through lane coming through the intersection and tapering it off on the west side of the intersection. So we're only having 1 through lane coming through on eastbound Nicholas Road, going through the intersection of Joyner and then past the project. Theoretically, we could have a full 4-lane road, but ultimately we then end that 4 lanes at O Street anyway. So we're already having some constraints of you're opening and closing lanes, and based on for the whole complete streets alternative, and also considering that one of the major traffic movements coming off of eastbound Nicholas Road at Joyner is a right turn as you're going on the southbound Joyner Parkway. Of course, there's always going to be people making all the movements, but actually that right turn tends to be the most dominant traffic movement. And if we were to try to continue having 2 through lanes, well, now we're going to have a trap right. If you got a red light, all the people that want to turn on the southbound Joyner, they're waiting for the light to change. Based on those, that's where it just doesn't make sense based on the way the travel patterns are, based on the land uses, to continue having the 4 lanes going all the way through the project.
Thank you.
All right. Thanks, Commissioner Manning. Let's see, Commissioner Roberts, do you have anything at this time?
Yeah, I sort of agree with what they're talking about, putting that right-hand turning lane onto southbound Joyner, because I travel that road just about twice a day, for a long time, and 90% of the time right now you got 2 lanes going across, and 90% of the time everybody's turning left. I mean, it's turning right anyway. But the one thing I wanted to make sure, I don't know if this is the proper place or whatever, but I just want to make sure that the future residents understand that what is across the street is Sierra Pacific. You got yeah. Paul's sitting there shaking his head. There's going to be some noise considerations, and there's some smells that some people don't like. I enjoyed it because I like this wet wood, but I just want to make sure that these residents understand that also. Future residents.
It's one of the largest lumber mills in the region. It's right across the street, but it's already there. So it's pretty
exactly.
obvious. You'd have to be blind not to see it.
Exactly. But yeah, on the road, what you guys are looking at, it makes sense to me. That's it.
All right. Yeah, thank you for your comments. The only question I had is kind of continuing that on Nicholas Road. Is there any impact, or what impact does the high school have on that? I know there's different, right now there's not a whole lot of school happening, possibly, but, talking about keeping it single lane, through that area, I don't know if there's any advantage, disadvantage to opening it up a little more. I know we're going to get a new high school in 12 Bridges, so maybe that's just a moot point now. But
Mr. Chairman, I live in that area, and this is not, I'm not a traffic engineer, but based on what I've observed and living here for 22 years and driving to Gladding McBean every day for 20 years, going right by the high school, through the high school, it wouldn't appear to me that the high school traffic would have a large impact on that intersection, just based on what I've seen as a resident over the last 22 years.
Okay.
Just personal opinion, not based on engineering or education, just on living here for a while.
Yeah.
And if I may add, the traffic counts would have considered, they were done pre-COVID, and they would have considered the high school traffic. They would have been done during open school times.
Okay.
I do think a fair concern, though, is the right turn heading north on Joyner Parkway, and then overloading that U-turn, left turn lane during the high traffic hours. Everybody leaving at the same time in the morning and immediately turning right, having to merge left to then take a U-turn to head south on Joyner. I feel like we can do better than that. That's my take on that.
All right. Excellent. Well, thank you for everyone's comments during that initial round. Just a reminder, we'll bring it back to the commission again after a public hearing portion. So Getting through all of the first round of commissioners, we'll go ahead and open the public hearing portion of this agenda item.
Chair Johnson,
Yes.
we do have representatives as panelists that may representing the project that may want to comment.
Okay.
So that was not mentioned earlier, so I wanted to bring that to your attention.
Okay. As part of the public hearing or as part of the staff?
As part of the public hearing and comment.
Okay, excellent. Yeah, so I'll go ahead and open that up. If we have anybody with their hands raised that would like to speak. And I'll ask the secretary to help facilitate that.
Good afternoon, Chair, members of the Planning Commission. This is Chad Roberts on behalf of the applicant. Are you able to hear me?
Yes.
Great. I don't have anything to add to Paul's and Patrick's presentations at this time, but I do want to thank staff for all their hard work in getting this project before you this evening. If you have any questions, I'm happy to answer them. I want to note the applicant's engineer is also on the line, Greg Bardini, and he's available to answer any technical questions you might have. Otherwise, thank you for your time and consideration. We'd respectfully request you adopt the staff recommendations. We'd also request you include the revision of condition 61 that Paul noted, and also specify a date certain for a second hearing on this item if that's your desire. Thank you again.
Thank you. All right. Do we have any additional public comments?
We do have public that has their hand raised. I'm going to call on this first phone number ending in 7296. If you can unmute yourself and announce your name, please.
Good evening, Planning Commissioners. Mike Garabedian. I live on Shellbach, just east of the project. My primary concern is the bikeway and trail along the drainage area. This is a walking park now. It's not clear if there's going to be through walking and bike traffic through the neighborhood, which I am also concerned about. People coming and going from both different sides or different areas. But I'm really the key thing is that the bike trail doesn't need to go through it. Joyner and Nicholas have what looked to me like quite a bit of room for bike lanes and so forth. I don't oppose bike lanes, but I'm concerned about the park in particular. If I'm not clear from looking at the map, it would end at the pedestrian bridge for the time being, but maybe I'm wrong about that. That certainly would be a very bad idea. It's not a very large park. Few minutes of biking through it, it'd be a great slowdown there. The park is heavily used by, I'm a 74 myself, and plenty of people older than me and kids and things. And so it's just not clear what would happen to that traffic in the park where I don't think street bikes belong. You never see street bikes there now. That's really the main thing. I'm curious about why there isn't, why there's possibility of an in lieu fee when there could be, greenery or playgrounds or something in this tightly closed kind of neighborhood to its own, to itself. I am a forester by training, and I like being able to see a log mill, and I like being able to try to guess what kind of trees are being sawed by the smell. I find that intriguing. I'm also a biomass supporter, which there is a facility there, but biomass facilities in or near urban areas, there's a bit of ruckus about the one in Fresno, for instance. So there is a potential issue there. It is an existing use, and I think it's a good use, but locating a project there might lead to some complaints or something about it. Not from me though. So I'm glad to learn that the CEQA document is available, and I look forward to seeing it. I would like to know where the bike lane would go, if it would proceed, what the plans are for it. Well, I haven't seen the master plan. I'm certainly going to look for that now, but I wonder where it goes from being next on the south side of this project. If that's exactly where it is, then where it goes. So I think there is a question of bike traffic impacts on the park, on the people, on its use, on the playground there. 2 playgrounds and 1 park. It's a great place. I use it all the time for walking, and then from there beyond over to Q and P streets through those walkways. So I'm glad I look forward to looking at the environmental document and probably giving you some more input. Thank you.
All right. Thank you for your time and your comments. Let's see. Do we have some others?
Yes, you have Mr. Carver. You
Okay.
can unmute yourself.
Hello, can you hear me? This is Randy Carver.
Yes.
Okay, I live right here on Oates in Street, so I'm looking at this this traffic layout, and from what I'm getting is Nicholas will be reduced, headed towards O Street to make way for sidewalk. I see that the traffic will be turning from Nicholas onto F Street. Well, what could possibly be F Street? I guess it's A2. Anyway, project phase A2. So is that traffic going to be able to turn left as well from O Street, going down Nicholas onto what is possibly going to be F Street? And I see a lot of traffic impact with the high school and that whole thing. And I'm just looking at 199 plus density family size homes. That's what I'm kind of getting out of it. But how many, like, what size family lots are they? Like, how many people per lot? How many family members? This is all stuff that will come into play when we're talking about traffic and traffic congestion, and basically how it's going to impact. Like, is it going to increase traffic incidents because there's not a turn lane to the right for that traffic going on to F Street? From what I saw on the planning map, I'm not sure if that's correct. I'm just going by what I saw. So that would be one of my main concerns, is traffic turning on F Street, taking a right or a left from Nicholas. That would be a huge traffic impact, especially with the high school, because I know O Street, where the stop sign meets not Joyner, but Nicholas, it is backed up from one stop sign to the other stop sign, and teenagers will cut through the parking lot before O Street and then go on to N Street and then continue down the residence. Another issue I would be looking at, especially with that high density area, is sewer impact, water impact, fire impact, most definitely, especially with the high density homes compacted in that area with a lumber mill directly next door to it. These are all things that would come into play. So I would be interested to see that information CEQA 90-page document and see if it covers any of that or if that's even a part of it. Appreciate your time. Thanks so much, Planning Commission, for hearing me.
Yep. Yeah, thank you for joining tonight and sharing your comments with us.
And the next person we have is Jason and Shannon.
Okay.
Good evening. Can you guys hear me okay?
Yes.
Good evening. Longtime resident, first time caller. How are you guys tonight?
Good.
Thank you for taking my call. First off, I am a resident on Shellback, and there's a few safety concerns that I have that specifically deal with that open space. One of which is within the last month, October 1, excuse me, to October 31, there has been 4 calls for service, 2 of which are medical aid, 2 of which are PD requests. I have a history and a background in EMS. This tends to be a significant problem. If there's to be a bike trail right there, you're going to draw a lot of unwanted attention to a bike trail that's unlit. Now, if you light the bike trail, you're going to affect homes that are on Shellback and also Phoenix Circle. So that's going to be one major impact with that open space. Another issue is that open space, the city of Lincoln has failed to maintain that since I've lived here on this property. Who is going to be responsible in maintaining this? Another part with this open space, if you haven't lived here or been on the street during heavy raining season, this is severely impacted to the point of flood stage. I don't think that this drainage is going to be able to withstand an increased capacity of water drainage, specifically right there, without affecting all the homes that are nearby, causing us possibly to have, increased insurance. Another issue is I specifically wrote 2 letters to a gentleman who was on the phone call tonight on April 13th and 24th. When I bought this home, my water pressure was at 120 PSI at the street. When I called Public Works, they had let me know, kind of a hush-hush situation, that the reason why our water pressure was so high was because of the new development over in Lakeside. Over at the park, they removed a pressure regulator, which increased all of our home's pressure, causing significant damage, and also the need to install pressure regulators. My concern with this development is how it's going to affect all the surrounding homeowners. What kind of costs are we going to incur? Can we pass those Can we pass along those costs to the city? Because that's not what the home was designed for when we all purchased our houses. So again, just to kind of piggyback on some of the people with bike trails, yes, big issue. Drainage, major issue. And then second of all, how is it going to impact our homes?
All right. Thank you very much.
There are no other hands raised.
All right. So let's see. Stop my stopwatch there. So I guess maybe I'm going to look for a little guidance from the city on this one. So I know at the beginning talking about the possibility to, and I don't know if the terminology is right, postpone public hearing to a certain date. Is this the time that we do that before public hearing period is closed?
Given that there are no other individuals wishing to provide public comment, you can close public comment. But if there is then a motion to continue this meeting to decision to a date certain, it's within the chair's discretion to reopen the public hearing at that time.
Okay, perfect. All right, thank you. So with that, I will go ahead and, as there are no more public comments at the moment, I'll go ahead and close the public hearing portion of this agenda item. And I guess bring it back to the commission to see what the desires of the commission, if there are any motions proposed to postpone the date, etc.
I don't need to postpone it.
This is Commissioner McKinney. Likewise, I don't feel the need. I don't feel I have a need to postpone it.
This is Commissioner Hutchinson. I concur with Commissioners Kinney and Cross. I don't have a need to postpone.
Likewise.
This is
Commissioner Manning. I'm sorry, Commissioner Lyons.
No,
Go ahead, Johnny.
I think because there was concern at the start of the meeting, it's been addressed that there was a concern. One of my concerns is consistent with Chair Johnson's, that not only is it for me to vote on something that I haven't looked at, and more so from a public standpoint, I think the right thing would be, and I'd be inclined, even though I don't want to spend any more time with a special meeting, I think the right thing to do would be to have a special meeting and open it back up to public comment, give all of us an opportunity to look at that 90-page document. That's our due diligence. I believe that's what we should do. And I think it prevents any person in public or anywhere else to come to us after we've already addressed it publicly and say that we were inadequate in our decision. I think it would be irresponsible to do it any other way, even though I do believe that there was a complete hearing tonight. I think we should just eliminate any issues to give anybody an opportunity to say that it was inadequate. And so that would be my suggestion.
My reason for not needing to postpone it was the fact that this is going to come before the city council anyway. So if anyone has a concern, they'll have a chance to address that concern to the city council before they take a vote. So was that a motion that was just made? Are we waiting for a second, or I don't get it?
I think at this point, we're looking for a motion either way, either to adopt the resolutions or to continue the hearing. And there can be competing motions.
Then I'll make a motion we continue the hearing and call it a special meeting.
I'll make a motion. I'll make a motion that we proceed with the vote.
Which one do we address first?
Okay, well, first of all, were there seconds to both motions?
I'll second Commissioner Cross's motion.
I second Tony's.
Okay. All right. So under Robert's Rules of Order, we take the competing motions in reverse order. So the first motion that would be before the Planning Commission is the adoption of the resolutions.
All right. So for that, do we go through each one individually, or do we just take it as a chunk and say, are we going to vote on them?
No, I think you need to take them each individually, and it needs to be a roll call vote.
Okay. So if we're going to jump to that, would we need to see if anyone else had any more questions related to those,
No, it's got a motion and a second. It's time to vote.
All right. Let me pull up.
Technically, Robert's Rules of Order allows discussion after
a second.
It does.
All right.
And the parties can also agree to reverse the order of the motions if they so choose.
Do the parties want to do that, or do we want to proceed with Commissioner Cross's motion first?
I just have a point of just clarification, what I think I heard from city staff earlier in the evening, and that is the CEQA document has been available for review for the public. It's been out, it was publicly noticed, it's been available, and I presume on the city's website, and maybe staff can where that document has been available and how it was noticed. So the public has had access to the CEQA document. We've even had access to the CEQA document, I mean, if we were watching the city's website as well. So can you just clarify?
Yes, Commissioner McKinney, I can. We provided notice in the Lincoln News Messenger identifying that the draft mitigated neg declaration would be available for public review beginning October 19th. The notices were sent by mail to the surrounding property owners. It was placed on the public notice section of the city's website, which gets sent out per e-blast at the time that for anyone who has signed up for notification on the website, and it has been on our city's website since October 19th.
And is it also, most CEQA, I think all, but I'm not sure. I know EIRs, usually there's a requirement to mail notices to individual addresses within a certain distance from a project. Is that
Yes, that was done.
Requirement?
It is one we did do. We notified property owners within the 400-foot boundary of the project site.
By direct mailing?
By direct mailing, yes.
So the CEQA document has been available for review. As Commissioner Cross pointed out, we are making a recommendation to through this process to the City Council. So this process doesn't end with us. The public still has an opportunity to continue to review the CEQA document and take questions before the city at a City Council meeting where the final, action will actually take place. So I do have one other question, if I can, that's not related to moving this forward or not tonight, if I can ask it.
Yeah, please go ahead.
So it's related to the bike trail. I believe I heard that the bike trail that is shown in this project is part of the city's overall bike trail master plan, in which case, is it fair to say that if this project were to be a commercial project, if it weren't undergoing a rezone, that bike trail would still be there?
Yes.
And the drainage issue that was brought up about, is that swale large enough? I think of the Mr. Bardini, the applicant engineers on the phone. How was that analyzed, the drainage? Or staff?
Yeah, we'll defer that to our engineering manager, Lindy Childers, who can explain the process that we go through to evaluate drainage through an entitlement project.
So yes, this is Lindy Childers, engineering manager for development engineering. So they provide a preliminary drainage study with the entitlement application that is reviewed and determined to be adequate to proceed with the conditions of approval and the approval of the tentative map. At the time that the improvement plans are submitted for review, there is additional detail provided for the design and revisiting of the drainage study for final details and additional calculations if what was done preliminarily was not enough to provide the information to determine that the pads are high enough so that it's not going to provide, that the drainage will not provide an adverse effect on the neighboring properties. So we have a process for reviewing the drainage, and it has been preliminarily submitted and reviewed, and additional details will go into that during the design process.
Okay, thank you. And then with respect to water and sewer, those are typical utility functions analyzed in a CEQA document. And I would, I know one commenter mentioned increasing in pressure. I wouldn't anticipate pressures to increase unless there were larger pipelines being installed with this project, which I don't, into the general vicinity with this subdivision, which I don't see. So, Mr. Leftwich, can you speak to the analysis for water and sewer?
I have to defer the specific analysis for this project, but we do have transmission mains right out on Joyner Parkway. So there is sufficient water delivery capacity in this neighborhood to serve an additional 199 single-family homes. I also like to address the drainage with the existing channel a little bit as well. There's some in recent history we do in the surrounding neighborhoods during significant storm events had some localized flooding issues. And what we evaluated and we found the cause of that was buildup of sediment within the drainage channel that has occurred since it was first constructed over 30 years ago. We are in the process of a project right now to get that alleviated, so that all the contributing culverts coming into the channel where they were coming in, they were already half full just during normal circumstances, even with no flow. We are getting that channel back to its original inverts so that it will drain properly.
On the water side, what I thought I heard from Mr. Carver, or was it, I think it was Mr. Carver, about spiking, or maybe Mr. Shannon, that the water pressures increased at one time, and maybe some concern that this project would cause the pressures to increase and create a pressure spike.
Certainly is not going to cause the pressures to increase. And I'm actually even going to have to go back and talk to some of my water operations staff of how, and I think I even heard something about Lakeside 6, and I'm just not understanding how that would have caused a pressure spike in this area. I mean, this area is basically at the low spot of the water delivery system. And unless it wouldn't be anything further downstream towards Lakeside, it would have to be something further up the hill where the pressure reducing valves are to adjust those that would cause pressures to be higher. And I'm not aware of anything in recent history that's caused anything to go upwards of 120 PSI. Is fairly high. Although, down in that part of town, we are routinely, the pressure out in the street is routinely around 105. That's common.
That's what I would anticipate as well.
Yeah, it's at the low spot of the system.
Yeah. And then with regard to sewer capacity?
There's no constraints with regards to sewer capacity in that neighborhood. So I wouldn't expect that this project, the contribution from this project, any significant impact on the sewer conveyance system at all.
Okay, thank you. Those are my questions, and I'm ready to proceed with a vote if others are.
I just want to say thank you very much to Commissioner McKinney for those questions. Those were excellent questions that I appreciate you asking.
Call the question.
Yep. All right. So we'll get back to, so I have two motions on the table, assuming no one else has any more questions or comments. I know so one of them is a motion from Commissioner Manning to postpone to a date certain this, or Commissioner Cross's to proceed with the votes on the 4 resolutions we have before us. And I am not sure if it sounded like we go in reverse order of what the motions were made. I'm not sure if in this case it makes sense to go with to reverse the order of those, to go back to the order that they were presented. Because if it is postponed, then obviously we wouldn't vote tonight. So I'm not sure. It sounded like both of the members presenting those motions would have to agree on that. I don't know if there's any thoughts on that one.
Chair, the Robert's Rules of Order are essentially adopted by the City Council as a guideline. So it would be within your purview as chair if you wish to reverse for simplicity's sake.
Okay. I'll go ahead and do that then for simplicity's sake. I think it makes sense to do the motion from Commissioner Manning first, because if that was to be postponed, then we obviously wouldn't be doing any votes on the resolutions today. So we had a motion and second on Commissioner Manning's. I don't know, in the motion, do we have to put a certain date in there, or is it just enough to do a blanket? We can, we'll postpone it to a date certain, and then if it passes, we get the date.
You can do
that. Correct. If the motion is to advance this to a date certain for a special meeting, and then if the motion passes, we'll schedule the meeting and make sure that it's noted.
Okay. All right. So with that, we had a motion and a second. Roll call, please.
Commissioner Manning,
Is he on mute?
Thank you. Yes.
Commissioner Roberts,
Yes.
Commissioner Cross,
No.
Commissioner Hutchinson,
No.
Commissioner Lyons,
No.
Commissioner McKinney,
No.
and Chair Johnson.
Yes. All right, so with those votes, that motion passes does not pass. 4 no votes to 3 yeses, and that was the motion to postpone the meeting. So I guess Commissioner Cross's motion stands to be, I guess, moved now. So we will go ahead and move forward with that. The motion from Commissioner Cross was to go ahead and vote on the resolutions, and it's seconded. So I will start on those. All right. So we have Resolution 2020-34, resolution of the Planning Commission recommending approval of the general plan amendment for the 25.66 acre Joyner Ranch East project from 20 acres general commercial and 5.6 acres medium density residential to 23.17 acres medium density residential and 2.49 acres open space.
So moved.
I'll second.
Didn't we have to vote on my motion?
To move forward.
This is voting on your motion, Dan. We're just taking it resolution by resolution.
My motion.
So I think
my motion was.
Let me just clarify. My understanding was your motion was to move to adopt the 4 resolutions, and I just clarified that we would need to handle them one by one. So I think we've already had a motion and a second on each of the resolutions. We're just now taking the vote on each of those.
Now, my motion was to proceed with the vote. Then we were voting whether or not we should proceed with the vote tonight. That was my motion.
What we're doing.
Okay, well, we are proceeding with the vote, it looks like, because the motion to table was not approved.
Okay, so we didn't need my motion. All right. I just wanted to understand what we were doing.
Okay, so I think there was just some confusion. I think our understanding was that you were moving to adopt the resolutions and proceed with those. So I think we're taking them one at a time now.
That's fine.
So just for clarifying, why don't we go through each resolution, have a motion and a second, and then take a vote? So we're clear.
Do you want me to reread that first resolution?
No, I think the record's clear. We just need a motion and a second.
Okay.
I'll make the motion.
We already have the motion and a second.
We already had that.
Yes. We just need the roll call.
Yes. Yeah. So.
Okay. So Commissioner Hutchinson.
Yes.
Commissioner McKinney.
She's on mute.
Commissioner McKinney.
Sorry about that. I was on mute. Yes.
Commissioner Cross.
Yes.
Commissioner Lyons.
Yes.
Commissioner Manning.
No.
Commissioner Roberts.
No.
And Chair Johnson.
No. Let's see. So resolution 2020-34 passes with 4 yeses and 3 nos. Okay. Sorry, just making some notes. Okay, second resolution. Resolution 2020-35, a resolution recommending approval by the City Council, the rezoning of the Joyner Ranch East project area from 20.0 acres of general commercial and 5.6 acres medium density residential to 23.17 acres of planned development, medium density residential, and 2.49 acres of open space.
I'll move approval.
I'll second.
Okay, roll call, please.
Commissioner Lyons.
Yes.
Commissioner McKinney,
Yes.
Commissioner Cross,
Yes.
Commissioner Hutchinson,
Yes.
Commissioner Manning,
No.
Commissioner Roberts,
No.
and Chair Johnson.
No. Okay, so this resolution 2020-35 also passes with 4 yeses and to 3 noes. The third resolution, resolution 2020-36, a resolution of the Planning Commission recommending approval of an amendment to the Joyner Ranch General Development Plan. Do I have a motion and a second?
So moved.
I'll second.
Can I ask a question? Don't we need to add errata condition 61?
No.
Is that in this resolution?
I will defer to maybe our city attorney for that one. Or staff.
I'll have to defer to staff as to what the errata is.
I apologize, I was unable to hear the motion.
It's resolution 2020-36.
Correct.
Regarding the amendment to the general development plan.
No, it will be the last motion for a tentative subdivision map.
Okay, thank you. That was my bad.
No, good question. Thanks for clarifying that. So we did have a motion and a second, correct?
Yes.
Correct.
Okay. All right, roll call, please.
Commissioner Cross,
Yes.
Commissioner Hutchinson,
Yes.
Commissioner Lyons,
Yes.
Commissioner Manning,
No.
Commissioner McKinney,
Yes.
Commissioner Roberts,
No.
Chair Johnson.
No. Okay, so resolution 2020-36 passes with 4 yeses to 3 noes. Fourth resolution, resolution 2020-37, a resolution of the Planning Commission of the City of Lincoln recommending approval of the tentative subdivision map for the Joyner Ranch East project. And also want to include in there, you might have to help me on the name of it, the errata.
I'll move for that resolution with inclusion of the errata to condition number 61.
Second.
Go ahead, Bill. Go ahead, Bill.
Okay, I'll second it.
All right. Thank you for throwing that in there too, Vice Chair McKinney. All right, roll call, please.
Commissioner McKinney,
Yes.
Commissioner Lyons,
Yes.
Commissioner Cross,
Yes.
Commissioner Hutchinson,
Yes.
Commissioner Manning,
No.
Commissioner Roberts,
No.
and Chair Johnson.
No. So resolution 2020-37 passes with 4 yes votes to 3 noes. All right. So that will close out the public hearing section, item 8A. So we'll go ahead and move on to item number 9, general business, 9A. Let's see. This is the executive summary general plan, housing element and safety element update public review. And so it looks like Mr. Jim Bermuda's planning manager and consulting team will be presenting this item. Please.
Yes, thank you, Chair. Before I introduce our consultants, I just wanted to inform the Commission that the housing element is noted in the executive summary as one of those 7 elements of the city's general plan, and it's the requirement per state law. And the housing element sets up the policies to assess, our housing characteristics, the community needs, and establishing the programs to meet all these needs as it relates to housing. As a Commission knows, we've been working, and you've been involved in a joint meeting with City Council. We have been working the past year to meet the city's deadline to submit the housing element to the State Housing Community Development section of the state by May 15, 2021. And so what we're doing tonight is having a public review of the draft final housing element that we would like to forward on and submit to HCD. with the state. And our consultant, PlaceWorks, as you mentioned, will be addressing the commission and providing an overview of the new housing and proposed housing element. And we will take in comments from the commission as well as the public and integrate those comments as need be into the housing element moving forward. Should be noted as well, along with this meeting, the housing element will be brought back up to the City Council on December 8th, their last meeting of the year, for their input and comment, as well as any other comment from the public as well. And so at this point, I will move it forward to PlaceWorks and let them move forward, and then I'll close out at the end of their presentation.
Sure, let me share my screen. Right, does that look correct? Yep. Okay, perfect. All right, good evening. I'm Jennifer Gastelum with PlaceWorks. Tonight I have with me Cynthia Walsh, my project manager, and Eli Crispy to talk about the health and safety element. For some of you, this might be a little bit of a recap. We're going to go do an overview of the housing element, the regional housing needs allocation process, which drives the housing element update, and then talk about the public input we have received to date, and then go into the new programs, the programs that we've modified, and the programs that are being continued. So again, apologies if some of this is you already have heard this presentation. But for those of you who hasn't, the housing element is a mandated element of the general plan, and the housing element is updated every 8 years. In this case, for the city of Lincoln, the housing element is due for the next update by May 15th, 2021. And that means that the Planning Commission has to authorize it to the council, and the council has to adopt it by May 15, 2021 to stay on the 8-year cycle. Then you will not update this for another 8 years. The housing element does have to be submitted to HCD. So upon your authorization, we'll take it to council, and then we'll submit it to HCD for a 60-day review. And the goal of the housing element is to address the existing needs as well as project out the housing and economic needs of the community for the next 8 years, and to accommodate the city's fair share of the regional housing needs allocation through the land inventory process, which we'll get into. So on the right is a picture of your current draft housing element. As what you are looking at is your updated draft. And what we do in the housing element is one of the sections is to review the previous housing element. This is kind of the checks and balances process. We look at what programs have been accomplished, what programs should be continued, and what programs need to be modified and continued for this next 8-year process. So there's a matrix in there that you can reference. And then that information then feeds into the new goals, policies, and programs. There's a section on public participation. In addition to the workshops that we've held, we also did interviews with service providers throughout the region to gauge what the needs of residents throughout Lincoln are. And that is included in the document. The bulk of the document is kind of the thick technical background report, which includes the needs assessment. And again, we look at what the existing needs is, we look at what the incomes are, and we look at what special housing needs are per groups, including seniors and homeless across the city. The land inventory, the housing resource and constraints, is the section where we identify available sites to accommodate growth over the next 8-year period. Then we look at your governmental and non-governmental constraints. So we look at what are factors that it takes to build a house. How long does it take to build a house? How much does it cost to build a house? And then we look at what the fees are, interest rates, all of those non-governmental things that play into actually producing housing in the community. So that's all in there. So the regional housing needs allocation is a state housing production goal, and the state of California comes up with a growth projection number of new households over the next 8-year period, and that number is then broken down to councils of governments, and in our case here, SACOG, which is the Sacramento Area Council of Governments. The allocation was 153,000, a little over 153,000 new units that the state is projecting that will be built in the Sacramento region over the next 8 years. And then broken down further to Placer County, it's roughly 31,000 units. And then the city of Lincoln, which is a little over 5,000 units, roughly 16% of the total of the Placer County allocation. The goal of the RHNA is to identify sites to accommodate development should development occur. It is not the job of the city to build, it's the job of the city to help facilitate development through regulatory incentives and vacant land inventory that can help accommodate development. I'm going to pass it off to Cynthia, and she's going to show you what your land inventory looks like.
Thank you. Good evening, everyone. So looking at the sites inventory, we are relying on a mix of vacant sites, approved and entitled projects, as well as projecting out ADUs or accessory dwelling units over the 8-year time frame. So for our vacant sites, we identified 17 sites, which total roughly 46 acres. Then we also looked at projecting out ADUs. We are using the factor that HCD has deemed as is okay. So we're going with that. We're projecting 40 ADUs over the 8-year timeline. And then we looked at the approved and entitled projects, and you can see all of them listed there. The Village 1, 5, and 7, which is bolded, those are the projects that we are relying on to meet the lower income RHNA allocation. So this shows you a map of the specific vacant sites that were identified. This is all in the housing element as well, if you want to take a closer look at any of these. And then this map is showing the approved and the entitled projects within the city. You will see that there are a few that need a little bit more work to bring them into the city before we can completely rely on them. So in meeting the RHNA, this table is comparing the regional housing need allocation to the capacity that we just talked about. So you can see our allocation in towards the left of the table, and then you can see the projected ADUs, the vacant, non-entitled, and the planned. And then in the far right column, you can see that we are in a surplus. So this is going beyond what the allocation is. It's always good to have somewhat of a buffer, because if there are sites that develop as not affordable when we are projecting them to be affordable, you have some wiggle room and you're not constantly having to identify additional sites.
Just to interject real quick, the very low and low category means densities in the 20 to 30 range for high density. That's what we're looking at.
So sites included in the inventory must be shovel ready. So which means the zoning, the general plan designation must be in place for us to credit those. So that's something that needs to take place during the time frame of 2021 to 2029. Typically, HCD wants to see that happen sooner in the planning period rather than waiting until the very end. So you can see the actions that still need to take place for Village 5 and SUD B. We need to complete the tax share agreement with the county. Annexation must be approved by LAFCO. There are multiple services review, complete project-specific entitlements, and then infrastructure must also be available. Other sites, we need to complete CEQA review, look at project-specific entitlements, and again, infrastructure must be available. So these are all key items that will need to occur earlier in the planning period in order to continue to credit the units that we are assuming in the inventory. So public participation is a big part of the housing element development. So as Jenny mentioned briefly, we did conduct a public workshop that was back in July. This provided an overview of the housing element and the health and safety element. And then we opened it up for questions and answers and gathered input and feedback. And we did have 12 registered attendees for that. Some of the input that we received was infrastructure capacity for growth, projects with affordability expiring. So these are current projects that may have their affordability reaching expiration and what the plan is for those. Importance of preserving affordable housing for seniors. The restrictions on ADUs and homeowners associations. Looking at a mix of housing types in the city, city-enacted initiatives for affordable housing development, bus accessibility for affordable housing, and promoting mixed use in development in the downtown area. So we also completed consultations. We reached out to local agencies and service providers. You can see that the 5 that we were able to consult with are listed above. We did reach out to several, and we were able to, we actually have contact with 5, so that was good. Some feedback that we did receive was to pass a formal resolution for affordable housing with clear objectives and a timeline, continue to work with builders and be responsive for affordable housing and upzone single family zones as needed, and to report on the progress of the RHNA. This is something that is done annually through the annual housing element report. So we do report on that as well as the progress of all of the programs. And then to look at addressing the shortage of existing senior affordable complexes. So programs. So what are goals and actions? So the housing element identifies goals, policies, and actions as a part of the document. The goals are unique to the city of Lincoln. They correlate directly with the general plan, goals, and policies, and it's the overarching city's plan for the housing element. The actions are the city's specific to-do list. So these are actually actions that need to be implemented during the 8-year time frame. And then again, that is reported on annually. So we have included new actions to address state law and to incorporate feedback from the public, the council, and the task force. So you can see here we have the city's 5 housing element goals: to accommodate new housing to meet the needs of present and future, conserve and improve the existing housing stock, address special needs, populations in Lincoln, promote equal housing opportunities, and evaluate the progress of the housing programs. So looking at the new actions added to address state law, we have an action to amend the zoning ordinance to bring the state density bonus law up to current requirements, to amend the zoning ordinance or to adopt a standalone ordinance for accessory dwelling units, to establish a streamlined approval addressing SB 35, and also to amend the zoning ordinance to comply with supportive housing within 1 year of adoption. To continue those, we have a few more. We are to address state law. We are going to amend the zoning ordinance to comply with low barrier navigation centers. These are shelter enriched These are service-enriched shelters that focus on moving people into permanent housing. And then lastly is AB 686, and this is a really big one this time around, and this is to identify activities to affirmatively further fair housing. So looking at actions that were included to address feedback was to explore adoption of inclusionary ordinance, consider requiring affordable housing plans as part of specific plans, exploring a housing trust fund and or a commercial linkage fee. Also to consider increasing the maximum density in the HDR to 30 units to the acre. Again, this is something that the state has determined. They believe that the default density for the city of Lincoln is what is going to produce affordable units. And so bringing your HDR zone to allow for 30 units to the acre is kind of letting HCD know that you're trying to meet what they are expecting. We have made the case in the housing element that 25 units to the acre is also appropriate. We reached out to some affordable housing developers but it's going to be a pretty tricky sell to HCD. So moving that HDR to 30 units to the acre will definitely be easier, especially for the next housing element cycle. The last action was to expand the wastewater facility. I'm going to pass this over to Eli so he can walk through the health and safety element.
Thank you, Cynthia. As part of this project, we are also updating the health and safety element for the city of Lincoln. The health and safety element, like the housing element, is a required component of Lincoln's general plan. And the state now requires that safety elements be regularly updated, usually as part of a housing element update. The health and safety element, as the name suggests, is intended to help protect Lincoln against threats to public health and safety, both natural and human caused. We are looking at protecting Lincoln against acute natural disasters, things like landslides, floods, wildfires, and so on, as well as longer term harmful conditions such as extreme heat. For this update, we're really trying to look at what has been done in Lincoln before, look at what has been done recently in Placer County, and trying to build off of the regional framework that is in place around a lot of health and safety related topics. This way, we can make sure that Lincoln's health and safety element is well coordinated with what is going on in the surrounding communities and with Placer County, and is building on those existing regional resources. The existing health and safety element covers a number of topics that you see here on the left-hand side. We are making updates to almost all of these in response to new requirements by the state, as well as new information that's become available and new best practices. The one item that we are not updating as part of this work is the information and the policies related to noise. Those are not part of this update, so they are remaining unchanged. And the city has the option to update those at a later date. We are recommending 2 new sections to be added to this health and safety element. One is looking at the crime in Lincoln and general issues of law enforcement. The other is a state-required section that addresses climate change, looking at the potential for climate-related hazards, wildfires, floods, extreme heat, drought, and a handful of others that may affect the community safety and well-being. So we are required to include those now under state law. Getting more specifically into some of the requirements around what the state has recently enacted, there are specifics around how we present information related to flooding and wildfires. We have to present some fairly detailed information as mandated by the state. The health and safety element also has to include a number of specific policies to help protect new development and ensure that the city is coordinating with flood and wildfire protection agencies. As I mentioned, we have to address the issues of climate adaptation and resilience, looking at how Lincoln may be harmed by climate-related hazards. And just into effect in 2020, the state now requires that a safety element identify residential areas, neighborhoods, or individual developments that may face evacuation constraints. That is to say, if there was a need for a large-scale evacuation, looking at areas where there might be limited access, where potential complications with an evacuation could occur. A significant analysis that is new for the health and safety element as part of this update is what's called a vulnerability assessment. This is part of the new state requirements to address climate-related hazards. The vulnerability assessment is a fairly large-scale technical analysis that looks at how various population groups and community assets in Lincoln may be harmed by a number of different hazard conditions. So as I mentioned, we are trying to take a very holistic approach with this health and safety element update. We are looking at how not only populations might be harmed, but we are looking at infrastructure, buildings, key economic assets in the community, local ecosystems and natural resources, and community services. We are exploring how different hazard conditions might affect several different categories of populations and assets within these 6 sort of overarching groups. We are determining the level of vulnerability for each of these populations and assets using a 5-point scale that you see here. And based on the results of this vulnerability analysis, we are proposing policies that are intended to help reduce community vulnerability and increase the overall resilience in Lincoln to these natural hazard conditions. This is building off of work that was recently completed by Placer County. They went through a vulnerability assessment for the unincorporated area that was completed in 2018. It was just recently updated a few months ago. So we are building off of that analysis to make sure that we are consistent with the county, but we are also making modifications and amendments to make sure that this assessment is fully reflective of Lincoln specific conditions and not what may be going on in other parts of Placer County. So that covers the health and safety element update. I'll pass it back to Jenny and Cynthia to wrap us up.
Sure, thank you, Eli. Okay, so looking at the project schedule, we're about halfway through our schedule. We've prepared an admin draft. We've moved that into a public review draft. We've had our study session back in July, as well as the community workshop. City Council study session again on October 6th. This evening, we are bringing the document forward to the Planning Commission. And the next steps will be to the City Council to get approval to submit the document to HCD. The housing element will go to HCD for a 60-day time frame, and the safety element will go to CAL FIRE for a 90-day time frame. We will work closely with HCD to gain a conditional compliance letter, which means we have addressed any concerns that they may have in the document. And then the letter states, if you adopt this document, you will be found in compliance. The adoption hearings will occur in April. So we do have a little bit of wiggle room from that May 15th date, which is always good to have. The final certification timeframe is a 90-day review, and that would run from April through July. So as we mentioned earlier, this evening we are looking for recommendation to submit the housing element to HCD and the health and safety element to CAL FIRE.
Thank you, Cynthia, Jenny, Chair Johnson. Last comment to make before we head into any questions, comments, and input from the commission would be that, again, we do have the document out for public comment. It's linked at our homepage. You can go to the main page and click on a link. It'll bring up the document, and I am referenced in there as the contact representing the city for anybody that does have comments. It'll be up and running until December 8th, the city council meeting that is mentioned previously and just recently. Lastly, to date, we received, I think, one commenter that had questions related to or some comments on statements made within the document that set kind of a lofty, ambitious current housing element goals that we have met, meaning I think, we are trying to endeavor to bring affordable housing in the city, but I think the comment was that within the document and this draft here, final, it kind of falls to a belief that we have been quite successful. And I think, from all of us, we're working on it, trying to bring that to the city. So we'll take a look at some of the lofty language that we have in this draft and make necessary changes. And then there was another comment on the assessment related to homelessness and the counting. And we will take a look, I will, with the consultants to make sure that we're getting an accurate count, as well as there's not an overcrowding within the city and the reporting is accurate. So we'll take a look at that as well as it relates to homelessness in the city. And as I mentioned, I'll meet with the consultants on that and discuss further. So with that said, that concludes our presentation, and we're open for any comments from commission and from the public. Thank you.
All right. Thank you, Jim, and representatives from PlaceWorks. I appreciate all your work on that. Let's see. So I'll bring it to the commission just to see if there's any questions, comments. I'll just go through just for simplicity. Commissioner Cross, do you have anything you'd like to ask?
Not at all. Thank you.
Commissioner Hutchinson?
No, just a comment that I've sat through two of the prior demonstration or presentations, and they're very complete. Well done, easy to understand. That's all.
Perfect. Commissioner Lyons?
Just echo Commissioner Hutchinson's comments and nothing else.
Okay. Vice Chair McKinney?
Yeah, thank you for the concise presentation about it all. I have just one question. What is fair housing? What does that mean? And did I open up a big Pandora's box here? I'm not trying to.
Mostly just like anti-discrimination, fair housing, so that fair housing practices, just exactly what it means, that you know, people are not being discriminated against. Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
Sure.
I have no comments to the document.
Thank you. Commissioner Manning?
Yeah, no questions, but thank you for the presentation.
Okay. And Commissioner Roberts?
No questions. And also, again, thank you for the presentation.
Excellent. And myself, thank you again for the presentation and for all the work you're doing. And I don't have any questions or comments at this time either. So thank you for that. Let's see, that was our only item for general business. And so that was 9A. So we'll go ahead and move on from general business to item number 10.
Chair, we need to open it for public comment.
Oh, sorry. Okay. Thanks for reminding me. Okay, we'll open it to public comment.
Yes, Chair. We have Mike Gerbedian with his hand raised. You can speak now.
Mike, are you there? Perhaps on mute.
You are showing as muted, Mr. Gerbedian. There we go.
I guess I stayed unmuted because I wanted to speak on the final two motions, and I think it's too late for that.
Correct.
Thank you.
Yep. But just to that point, just a reminder, so that will come to the City Council again at a future date. So just keep an eye on that. And there'll be opportunities to provide further comments as you wish on there. So.
There are no other hands raised.
All right. With no other hands raised, I'll go ahead and close the public comment period on this item 9A, executive summary for the housing element. So I believe now we can move on to agenda item number 10, commissioner comments. So since we're in a virtual setting again, I will just go down the line and ask if there's any commissioner comments. Commissioner Cross.
Sorry about that. No comments. Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you. Commissioner Hutchinson?
No comment.
Okay. Commissioner Lyons?
Nope, thank you.
Vice Chair McKinney?
Only just to wish everybody a happy Thanksgiving as we get into the holiday periods, and hope everybody stays safe and enjoys the holidays as best we can under these unprecedented conditions.
I second that. Thank you. Commissioner Manning?
Happy Thanksgiving to everybody and no other comments. Thanks.
Okay. Commissioner Roberts?
Yes, I have one. And I think staff knows about this, but after 23 years of being on the commission, I'm hanging it up.
Wow.
I don't know. I don't know if I like those reactions I'm getting.
You're not allowed to go.
Oh, I'm not allowed to go. Okay.
Right.
Well, I started. What's that?
It's about time.
Oh, okay. You're gonna be the old one now.
I'm just teasing. I'll miss you a lot.
I know. But the funny thing was I had to find out exactly when I started, which was basically August of 1997.
Wow.
And so I basically started just before they broke ground in Del Webb. And so I have been appointed under 3 council members and stuff. And then I'm thinking to myself, okay, it's been 23 years. And I think I'm handing it off to a bunch of very, very good commissioners, so, but at the same time, I don't know if I'm going to, I know I'll be here for the December one, but I don't know if I'll be here. I don't know when my term is completely up. I don't know if Steve knows that or not. Steve?
Should be, if someone is appointed, it should begin in January.
Okay, whatever. So what I'm saying is if you still need me or whatever until somebody else appointed, I'll stay until then. So, but anyway, I wanted to wish everybody a very happy Thanksgiving. Be safe, and I have been dreading to say this for the last month or so. That 23 years. But I figured, like I said before, I'm leaving it in good hands. So there you go.
Well, thank you. way to drop the bombshell on us all.
I love it. Well, hey, that's the way I started. It was a bombshell when I started, so I might as well, leave it as a bombshell.
There you go. All right. Well, we really
hear the bomb.
Hear the bomb. Yeah. Well, Commissioner Roberts, we really appreciate everything you've done. 23 years. It's a good length of time. You've seen a lot in the city, so appreciate everything you've done.
Well, thank you. The funny thing is maybe getting it to you guys is a lot of times I made decisions that were based on what was in my heart and what was that felt good for the city and for the people, and that's how I did it. Mm-hmm. And then also try to keep staff being on the straight and narrow too, and earlier staff, not this one, but previous ones, they would try do a little bit of sneak a few things through here and there or whatever, but I caught them. But this staff is doing pretty good. Do you hear that, Steve?
Thank you, sir.
You're welcome. I'm done.
All right. Well, thank you again. Sad to see you leave, but we definitely understand. So my only comments is just want to wish everybody a happy Thanksgiving as well, and hope everyone stays safe and that we can all finally get over this COVID mess.
Happy Thanksgiving, everyone.
All right. So with that, we'll close commissioner comments. Go on to item number 11, informational items from the staff. I'll ask Mr. Steve Prosser, Director of Community Development, if he has any informational items from staff for us.
Nothing at this time. Thank you.
All right. Well, thank you. So with that, we'll go to the meeting's adjourned. Thank you for everybody and your participation tonight.
All right. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Good luck to you, Mike.